Yeah, welcome in, welcome back, welcome in, welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast and our second ever live episode. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate that. Real quick, want to say if you're here and on YouTube and you haven't already, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, that notification bell. Make sure that you're kept aware of whenever new content drops on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast, and we should come right up. Really appreciate if you're enjoying the content. If you give us that thumbs up, that 5-star review, and leave us a comment. All that stuff helps us grow, helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. So we got a pretty interesting show for you here today. And as you can see, I have a guest with me. I got my guy Tony from the Hoopstorians NBA History Podcast. What's going on, Tony?
Not much, man. Chilling. How you doing?
Doing all right, man. Definitely looking forward to getting into some good basketball conversation here tonight.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we did kind of a home and home. You were on mine last night. Now I'm on yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and I definitely enjoyed that. It was a good flavor, and now you're here with me, and so yeah, let's make it happen. So first topic we're gonna get to. We are going to go ahead and discuss something real interesting, and that's what else, right? We always find a way to work in LeBron James when we are talking about NBA basketball, and you got to, right? Because he's one of the most polarizing guys in the game. He's one of the best players of all time, or correction, he's had one of the greatest careers of all time. I'm not going to say he's one of the best of all time. A lot of people know my feelings on that, but regardless, incredible career, and so we got to talk about him, and we're going to talk about him through the lens of, obviously, whenever he comes up, you have the Michael Jordan, LeBron James debate, who's the GOAT, blah, blah, blah. Now, for me, and I've said this over and over again, I don't even see LeBron James as a top 5 player all time. So that GOAT debate is non-existent in my estimation. However, we got to talk about it. Most people have him at number 2, and that's fine. And so when I talk about Michael Jordan being the GOAT, and I don't think it's a discussion, I really, truly believe that the separation between Michael Jordan and LeBron is like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's miles apart from where we see the separation from LeBron and anyone else, or anyone else and anyone else. So that's my opinion, but we could talk about that. So anyway, what normally happens is, I get called the old head hater. I get called, a Jordan stan, whatever. And all that is cool. But what happens is this. When I point to, well, such and such a player says LeBron is not the GOAT, such and such a player said LeBron is not the GOAT, I always get well, those are old head haters. Those are old people saying that. So I always find it interesting when I see a player from this generation or a younger player who says LeBron is not the GOAT. So first, last year, I think The Athletic did an anonymous survey of modern NBA basketball players, guys playing now. 58% of guys playing now said Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. So I don't know. That's the first thing. So really where I want to go with this is I found it so interesting. This was something that was talked about like last year, but it's recently resurfaced. So we got Shai-Gilgeous Alexander, the number 2 scorer in the NBA and a legitimate MVP candidate for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And he had some very interesting remarks when he was asked about his top 5 all time. So let's check that out. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about it with Tony.
All-time starting 5, including me, would be Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin Durant.
So why is that interesting? Like I just mentioned, Shai-Gilgeous Alexander is playing now. He's a guy who is one of the better young players in the league, right? So it can't be said that he's an old head hater or he's one of the guys from the old generation that don't want to give LeBron his props. But if you notice, he didn't put LeBron James in his top 5 all time, despite everything LeBron has done. Why is that? So I'm going to kick it over to you, Tony. Give me your thoughts on why you think a lot of guys don't see LeBron the way the mainstream sports media wants us to see LeBron, and the way Kluth Sports wants us to see LeBron, and maybe the way LeBron wants us to see LeBron. What are your thoughts on that? I can't hear you. I think your mic went out. No, I can't hear you, man.
Let's try this. How about now? Can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So I don't know what's going on with my headphones, but I can't speak why Shai did it. All I know is if you have Allen Iverson at your top five, something seriously wrong. You care more about highlights and substance and efficiency. Allen Iverson made it out of the first round only 3 times in his career. Every time after that, he also got bounced in the first round or didn't make the playoffs at all. He had an all-level talent. He also had an all-level talent, and Carmelo Anthony couldn't do anything without him, could never get out of the first round. They traded him for Billups, who obviously talent-wise is a much lesser player, but a more efficient player, understands system ball a whole lot better. They went from getting bounced in the first round to going to a conference finals. So we see that Allen Iverson and Detroit, on the other hand, they went from a conference finals to getting bounced in the first round when they traded for Iverson and traded for Billups. Allen Iverson was at prime. He shot 38% one year in his prime. He was constantly negative on the defensive rating. Everybody then points to, well, he led the league in steals. Yeah, he led the league in steals because he jumped the passing lanes 10 times a game and got 2.8 steals out of it. So 3 times a game, he would make the right play, and 7 times of the game, he would make the incorrect play. So I don't know why. If I had to guess, I would say flash and substance. When you got guys like Jordan, Kobe, Iverson over a LeBron, LeBron's kind of rigid when he goes to the hoop. When he dribbles, there's a play in the 2012 playoffs when they beat the Sixers. No, it was whatever year they beat. No, I'm sorry, 2011 when they beat the Celtics.
Okay.
Not the Celtics, when they beat the Sixers first round 4-1. There's a play where LeBron bounces it back or it goes back and then makes the pass, but he falls over when he does. So to me, it's looking like Shai values fluid motion and movement over that. LeBron is not as pretty with the eye. Like Kobe has a nice looking jump shot. Jordan has a nice look. LeBron has an ugly looking jump. His elbow sticks out more, maybe because it's naturally he's left-handed that he writes with, but he plays the game right-handed for some reason. I don't know why that is. But those would be my guesses on why he's doing it, because there is no metric where you could say Allen Iverson is a better option than LeBron James. Even if you want to try to say those others are, and I could even understand the logic and the argument behind a Kevin Durant, a Shaq, a Kobe, a Jordan, but there is no argument for Iverson. So if you're picking Iverson over, then there is some sort of bias that you see that is not factually proven, and there is no reason why anybody would like Iverson over James in that regard.
I think that's a very interesting point, and I hadn't even thought about it that way. So to your point, I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense in terms of how influential Allen Iverson was, along with obviously Kobe and Mike, and so that makes a lot of sense in terms of the team that he would have put together. Me personally, if I'm picking my all-time 5, and obviously everybody's healthy, everybody's in their prime, that's pretty simple. That's, in my estimation, that's Magic, that's Mike, that's Larry Bird at the 3, that's either Tim Duncan or Karl Malone, that's a wash at the 4, and Olajuwon at the 5. And I don't think I can lose with that roster. Now, I'm sure somebody could put together a roster and say, okay, we can go at you, but I don't see losing with that team I put together. Now, back to the original topic of LeBron and why maybe a Shai-Gilgeous didn't place him there, because this is interesting to me, because he's not the first of this generation not to put LeBron on the pedestal that so many people want him to be on. And I think a big part of it, one, you did mention, the fluidity of movement and all that, and also the aesthetics of the game. And LeBron, let's be real, for everything he's accomplished, he's not a pretty player, right? He has been a bull in a china shop for his entire career. And for a guy who's been in the league 21 years, it's amazing to me that it took 21 years for him to get even a semi-reliable jump shot. So that's something that's been missing. And the other part of the soundbite was, I think I read it recently, was that Shai-Gilgeous was saying that his game never really impressed me. He said, when I was growing up, LeBron is 6'8", he's super athletic. I wasn't that. He was big. I wasn't that. So that's not something that he could have identified with in terms of looking for something to model his game after. So I totally get it, because what LeBron does, very few people can say, okay, I want to do that, or I want to do that, So I totally get it. I think the second part of it for me, and this is a big one, and I talked about this with Man Down Sports podcast. Shout out Man Down Sports podcast. Great show. Check it out if you get a chance. But I talked about this with them. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that a lot of these guys see that LeBron cheated the game. And I know that's going to sound terrible or sound like a hater, but to me, he really did cheat the game in terms of not being willing to go through the fire like all the greats before him went through the fire to become a champion, and greasing the skids the way he did in order to make it easier at every turn to win. Because the fact is, this is a guy who, and this is irrefutable, he played with more all-star talent than any other player of his ilk in history. That's just what it is. And so when you've done everything you could just to make it easier and grease those skids, to me, I don't know if a lot of guys respect that from the competitive standpoint. Again, I'm obviously not in the NBA. I don't know how competitive the modern NBA is, and that's something I complain about a lot. It looks like guys are too friendly and not willing to really go at each other, but it could be that. So, I think that's just so interesting that he didn't put him there. Now, another example, Steph Curry, this was a couple of years ago. They asked him who his all-time top 5 was, and it was actually remarkably similar to mine. It was Magic, Mike, I think it was Bird, Magic, Mike, Bird, Tim Duncan, and Shaq, which I thought that's another really good top 5. But again, he doesn't name LeBron. And now that could be because those guys are rivals. They're concurrently playing and they are rivals. What are your thoughts on Steph Curry not having Shaq in his all-time top 5?
Well, so I have a couple different points, and I wanted to address a few things, then I'll get right into that. First off, I was reading the comments. It was an all-time starting 5, not a top 5, and he put Iverson at point guard. There's no room for LeBron. That's what Man Down Sports said. Well, a couple different things on that. Is one, Iverson predominantly played at shooting guard, not the point guard. Secondly, he has Kobe and Mike on the same teams. Both of them predominantly were the shooting guard, not a small forward. And finally, Kevin Durant is predominantly a small forward, not a power forward, which he would have to slide over. So obviously, for going based on that, it had nothing to do with position, because you have possibly 4 out of the 5 guys playing out of position.
Out of position. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that has nothing to do with it, because, he didn't pick, generally speaking, one person is going to get to play the traditional position at that. As far as that, I don't think people also factor in Shaq, how much all-star talent he played with. Just that, and we don't even have to go. We got Penny, we got Horace Grant, we have Kobe, we have Nick Van Exel, we have Eldon Campbell, we have Eddie Jones, we have Dennis Rodman, we have Glenn Rice, we have Mitch Richmond, we have Karl Malone, we have Gary Payton, we have Dwayne Wade, we have Steve Smith, we have Alonzo Mourning, we have Antoine Walker, we have Steve Nash, we have Grant Hill, we have Amari Stoudemire, we have we have Zdrunas Ilgauskas, we have Antoine Jameson, we have LeBron James, we have Rajon Rondo, Jermaine O'Neal, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and nobody played with more MVPs than Shaq. So when we go with that, we don't ever knock Shaq. And I haven't even named all the players that weren't even good enough, but still all great talents, like a Darrell Armstrong, 6th man of the year, Nick Anderson, who could average.
Let me interrupt you real quick on that, though. I think what we're talking about is, and those are all great points that you were able to run down, is that my issue is when it comes to Shaq in terms of all those greats that he played with, either those guys were well out of their prime or he was well out of his prime. When he was in his prime, there wasn't a whole lot of top tier talent like that. So I think that might be the sticking point or the argument. LeBron, he tried to load up everywhere he's been pretty much throughout his entire career, but carry on.
But as far as the top 5 and all that, you have to go with, when people are picking their top 5, it's really about a peak. It's about a 1-year thing, because when we're picking all these guys, we're not picking them for their career. We're picking them at the peak. For example, if you pick Jordan as your number 1 pick, right? And Jordan walked out with a cursive Chicago jersey and some hair, you'd be like, no, this isn't the Jordan I want.
Right.
I want bald-headed Jordan, you know what I mean? With a bland Bulls textile on there. So
1993.
So when you say, if I pick Larry Bird, 1 year, peak Larry Bird, I think LeBron is the great. There's a difference between greatest and best too, and we have to break that down. So best is your 1 year peak, and greatest is the totality of your career. So that's why greatness translates with like guys from the 50s, 60s, things like that. Wilt Chamberlain is still a 4-time MVP. Yeah. Now if you're saying he's competent, that's what he was able to accomplish. So I think that's where that comes into play. So if you want to say, I'll take Bird's peak year over LeBron's peak year, that's a serious argument, and I understand why you would say that. But the thing is LeBron was clearly better, from 18 to 24, no matter what way you want to slice it. Then Bird was better from, 24 to 30 or whatever that may be. And I'm just making up these numbers. And then LeBron is clearly better from 30 to 40. So he's better for 16 out of 22 years versus Bird. So I think that's what Steph Curry is looking at. These are the guys with their peak. Like, I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tracy McGrady's best season is better than Kobe's best season. You look at Tracy McGrady's 03 season, what he was able to do, and as the focal point of the defense trying to stop him, I think that is a better season. He was 32, 7, 6, higher percentages everywhere than Kobe, except in the free throw line. So I think that's where Steph Curry broke it down. I will take Bird's 85, 86, 84 season over anything LeBron. And then not only that, I think he provides all the passing that LeBron, plus Bird plays a game from shoulders up. He doesn't have the physical, but I mean, he's taller than everybody, but he's not a jumper. He's not speed. He played that from a cerebral thing. And especially since Golden State, they did that death lineup where they really moved the ball side to side. I could see why he would like that, because Bird is a better combination of ball movement and shooting. And that's what Steph Curry succeeded with. So that's why I think Steph Curry, I think it just thinks that this will match up with my teams well and how I want my team to play.
Yeah, that's pretty good stuff in terms of on the floor. I was also looking at it from the perspective of Steph Curry growing up in the league and having been around those guys in his formative basketball years. I'm sure that was probably that probably plays a role in how he sees the game and how he sees those guys. A Shai-Gilgeous wouldn't have had the opportunity to have been around that and to seen that, right? And so, I'm sure that Steph was in the arena watching when Bird was, shooting before games, or, I'm sure he's got a ton of autographs and all that good stuff. But, all that stuff is influential on him as a young player. So, there's that. Also, Man Down Sports has a great comment here, and this is something I often talk about. Bird also rebounded and passed better than LeBron. And people are going to say, well, LeBron has higher assist totals for his career. He absolutely does. One, he played a lot longer. Two, he's had the ball in his hands a lot more. Larry Bird played with a Hall of Fame point guard. He was not the primary initiator of offense, and yet he's only about 1 assist per game for his career behind LeBron. Also, he's a 10 rebound per game guy in a much more physical era on the arguably greatest front court of all time without LeBron's physical tools. So for me, there's not really much excuse why Bird should have been a better career rebounder than LeBron, but it is what it is. I guess they're going to say, well, the NBA is so much more efficient now. Guys aren't missing shots the way they used to. But no, I definitely like that comment. Shouts Mel, appreciate that. Bird did rebound and pass better than LeBron. But yeah, back to it. I just find it so interesting that for how hard these guys, the mainstream sports media and Kluth Sports and LeBron and LeBron and his fans and all that push to make us try and believe something, even the players from his era don't see it. And I think that's so interesting because, again, let's go back to the fact that just last year, 58% of the NBA, the active NBA, called Michael Jordan the greatest of all time. There has to be something behind that. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it could be there. I don't necessarily trust player judgment anyway. And I brought this up with you before as well. Like Kawhi, he pushed for the Clippers to get rid of Shea so he could have Paul George. Who would be better right now? Because you didn't win anything with Paul George. So who would you rather have, Paul George or SGA? I'd rather have SGA 11 out of 10 times right now. But that's how we saw Michael Jordan, how he ran his team. Couldn't run it. We saw Magic, one of the greatest players ever, when he was a coach. He was 3-9 as a coach. So we see a lot of these great players. They have no idea how to assess talent. They base it all off their own, because when you are one of the greatest, your ego is much bigger. And it's like, well, I know more. Look at me. Look what I've become. And I understand why it's like that. So I don't think necessarily players have a great assessment of talent. And we see the players that really do succeed. Generally speaking, they're like a bench guy like a Steve Kerr. Look at the greatest coaches. Greg Popovich, not good enough to make the league. Right. Red Auerbach, not good enough to make the league. Pat Riley, Phil Jackson, bench players. So that's what I'm saying. So I don't necessarily trust that. I think, though, too, these players, they grew up wearing Jordans. They grew up hearing stories about Jordan is at LeBron. LeBron's not at legend status. You watch LeBron play and all that. But Jordan, especially for players now, it's legend status. These players didn't see him play. Everything is a clip, a highlight, things like that. I don't think they go back and watch the full games and all that. And by the way, I have Jordan over LeBron, but I do understand the argument for LeBron being the greatest. If he is committing all these statistics, well, I'm saying if he is, there is an argument for it. You know what I mean? He's doing things that nobody's ever done before. The numbers back it up. I have a rotation of 5 people. I think there's 5 people that you could say is the GOAT, and I'll accept any one of the answers because I understand the logic behind it. Because everything is too subjective to have a definitive answer. There is no backup number that says this person is definitively number 1 over someone else. Like, we'll use anything with Jordan. Any argument you come up with Jordan, you can come up with a counter argument for certain people like that. It's about what you think, what you believe, what you value. Not everybody values what you value. What makes that the greatest? That's why the greatest. Now, best is a different argument. We could start arguing with best is a different thing, but best and greatest is subjective. Best is more like, what the numbers back up and things like that. So I think the players, like I said, they see the fluidity of the movement of Jordan over LeBron more, and they like that more. They've heard about people they trust, their coaches. Say Jordan's, like you said, you're the old head arguing it. Well, they were coached by people like that. Their dads told them like that, their brothers, their uncles, their, whoever. So I think that's also been in that. So I think they see the fluidity of the movement. They see that Jordan has more awards, did more and less and things like that. These are the reasons why I have Jordan over LeBron. So he's accomplished more in less time, except for overall totality of numbers. But he has more awards, more defensive player, more titles, more things like that. So I think that is why players value Jordan over LeBron.
Fair enough. So, all right, we'll leave it there for this particular topic. That was pretty good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and give you an opportunity to call the show at 904-219-8264. If you want to call in and give your thoughts on that, you can do that while we go ahead and move to the next topic. So, the second topic I wanted to discuss today is that we heard that recently, I think it was in the last week or so, Joe Dumars, who works in the NBA office, the front office now, has put out that the NBA is looking to consider possibly changing the rules to, well, what was the verbiage? They want to, we're looking at it like they want to curb some of this obscene scoring, but I think they said they want to make sure that they create some balance. So, they want to make it sound good. But this is interesting because we've been seeing all the changes that have been taking place since okay, I got a call here. So let's hold up. Let's get back to that, and we'll go ahead and take this call. Hello.
I wanted to make a comment on the starting 5 thing.
Yeah, absolutely. What's going on, Mel?
What's up, brother? How you doing?
Doing all right, man. Thank you for calling in. What you got?
Yeah, good. So, I did leave a comment on that, but I wanted to kind of clarify. It's different between the top 5 and the starting 5. So when people are asked about this starting 5 thing, they're not thinking about who the top 5 greatest are. They're thinking about how can I create a team. That their mind automatically goes to how can I create a team that's going to work, right? And when you put LeBron James on a team, there's particularly one way it works, and it's surrounding him with shooters and running high screen and roll. And a lot of players like Steph Curry, SGA, they don't value running a high screen roll offense. Those are the things that James Harden, Westbrook, Luka, and LeBron has made their baby. But when guys are studying Kobe, Mike, and stuff like that, and running a sophisticated offense like what they do in Golden State or other places, they don't value their high screen roll system. That's why they leave LeBron out a lot, because they're thinking about how can I create a team that's going to work. And having LeBron in there is not a good idea. I don't think it has anything to do with how good they think LeBron is. I think it has a lot to do with they don't prefer their play style.
Right. So when you say that, you're looking towards how everybody has to completely change what they do to comply with what's going to make him successful when they play with him. Am I understanding that correctly?
I mean, yeah, a little bit that too, but that's a true statement, but that's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, if LeBron doesn't have the ball, where's his best value going to be at?
Right.
And
What's he going to do?
When you look at the team that he put together, Kobe and Mike has played off the ball most of their career in a triangle. Of course, Shaq is a post player, going to dominate the ball unless you're throwing it to him in the post. Kevin Durant has played off the ball a lot and can play off the ball with catch and shoot and all that stuff, right? And then you got Iverson, who's been ball two guard, who's took a lot of shots, but at Georgetown and his first couple of years in Philly, he could play point guard and take a step back. So Shai-Gilgeous was building a thing based on his players and based on how he wanted the offense to look in his mind. And I automatically understood that when they're picking it. That's why they're leaving LeBron out. Steph Curry did it. Anthony Edwards did it. Shai-Gilgeous Alexander did it. There are a lot of people who leave LeBron out of their starting five.
Okay. Yeah. When I get asked that question, for me, it's obviously I look at the guys who I think are, the best players, but I also look at putting together a team that is functional, that could actually play and win a game. And that's why I laid it out the way I did. So, but I hear you on that. Tony, you got it? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm waiting.
No, Tony, you got it? You got anything from Mel on that?
So based off what he said is, playing off the ball, what about Allen Iverson says he plays off the ball? He's not a good shooter. He doesn't play defense. He is a bad defender. That's why he's got steal titles, but no all defensive teams. As far as that taking a step back, he came in the league shooting 19.8 a game his rookie season. He led the league. He led the team by far, playing point guard. He's always had the ball in his hand. That is not a mesh at all. You have a weak defender and a bad shooter. What good is he going to? He needs to have the ball, dribble and penetrate, and then he misses 3 out of 5. He does all that. He shoots 27 times to shoot 40%. And like I said, then you have a small player at that. So, for example, I'll put it this way. If somebody had Allen Iverson, I would get Sam Cassell, and I would have Sam Cassell post him up because Sam Cassell is the best point guard I've ever seen on the block by far. And there's nothing Iverson could do. And we saw that, and that's why it went 7 with the Bucks because Iverson couldn't stop him. They'd switch Snow, and they couldn't switch with Snow because Snow had to D up Ray Allen. So at one point or the other. So, yeah, I don't even see how it's a good fit. If that's the argument, because Allen Iverson completely throws that off.
Yeah, and yet everything you said, and yet Iverson be a better fit with this team than LeBron. Like, what would LeBron go at point guard? You would put LeBron at point guard? Like they have a better score for in KD. They have the better score and better defender with Jordan. He's not gonna play center. Shaq's the better center. Right, so you're going to put LeBron at point guard, and then where's LeBron's value as a player? His value is and roll, get downhill, and get to the rim. How do you want to when you got Shaq clogging the paint up, and you got the best 2 scorers we've ever seen in Michael and Kobe? Why the hell would I have someone that has to have a high sprint and roll run for him to get downhill in a wide open paint with 5 people standing at the 3-point line?
That's what I was going to say. We know we can't play with a big like that.
Yeah. I've seen LeBron James operate in any other way other than having his big man outside of the paint. How you gonna you can't have Shaq and LeBron on the same squad. They tried it before, and Shaq lasted 1 season, and he had to get up out of there. You just can't do it. So all the flaws you mentioned, if you want to nitpick it out of the game, you have to go and nitpick at Kobe at LeBron's game and see how all of that doesn't fit.
Well, so to answer your question, what I would do with LeBron, for example, is I'd run him off back screens and just go lobs. I can't do that with Iverson. The only thing that you can run with Iverson is iso.
Hold on, why would you do that if your main scoring options is going to be Kobe, Jordan, and Shaq? These are better scoring options, and then KD. You have 4 better scoring. You have 4 better scoring options than LeBron on the floor.
Yeah.
So I don't need LeBron. I don't need LeBron's offense whatsoever. I don't need his facilitating whatsoever. I don't need LeBron at all with his lineup. I have everything I need.
What do you need with Iverson with that lineup? He's not going to play D. You can't run up. He is literally the 5th best option on offense.
All you need for him is to bring the ball up and run the offense. He don't have to score. You don't need none of that from him. So
then if that's the case,
have that.
Well, wait a minute. If that's the case, why not get a Steve Nash or a Jason Kidd? A more distributor, a Rondo even. Somebody that's a better distributor, a better defender.
Well,
You have
you
a
have to
black
ask,
gaping hole with Iverson at defense.
you have to ask SGA that. I'm trying to relay his message on why he and explain.
And that's
why
what I'm saying. So if you could relay I'm going to have the bad defense, the isolation player that would literally be the fifth option. LeBron brings more. I'll put it this way: somebody's going to pick Magic in that all time, right? I'd rather have LeBron D'ing up Magic than Iverson. A peak LeBron, he can at least bring something on the defensive end.
Sure. But
I'll put it this way: that
point,
04 Olympics team, that 04 Olympics, that was led by Iverson. That's why they got the bronze.
Hey, go ahead, Mel. What were you saying?
No, I'm listening to Tony.
No, I was just saying that the Iverson-led team is, that's why they got the bronze. LeBron blends in better with talent than Iverson does. That's why they didn't work with Melo. That's why it didn't work with Weber. That's why Stackhouse had to get out of town.
I think LeBron and Iverson both are bad blends with talent, to be honest with you. But the size difference, it'll make LeBron, probably a more sexier pick. But LeBron does not fit with this team. I can do something with Iverson on this team because I'm not asking him to do much. I'm just asking him to play now. No one asked him to play this different game this way in his career, and when they did in Detroit, he quit. He retired. But I'm just saying with this lineup, I have no place and no room for LeBron James. There's no room. Like, I'm not putting him at point guard. I'm just not. I just don't want him there.
And I'm saying
I'd rather have Iverson shooting open jump shots if he get them than LeBron coming up and doing what LeBron doing and wanting to run high screen roll. It's just not a fit for me. I couldn't do it. Now, if you want to put LeBron in your starting five, then the better options for your team would not be a Shaq. You would have to prefer someone like Ilgauskas, Kevin Love, Chris Bosh, Davis, someone who's going to shoot jump shots and threes and open the lane up for him. Like, I'm telling you, as soon as you put LeBron in there, it throws the team off. You can't have a big man in the paint. You can't have a dominant scorer that don't need his facilitation. And Kobe and Mike don't need facilitation from no one. And neither does Kevin Durant. So what is the purpose of it? Like, I'm still asking the question. What's the purpose of LeBron if you're not using his facilitation and if you're not using a five-man out system with a wide open lane?
Okay, so I guess the purpose is with LeBron, you have the only 6'8", 270 player that can get nose level with the rim, and that is a defensive force at his prime.
But you don't need that. I'd rather have 6'7" Penny Hardaway.
Then take him. I don't care who you want to take over. What I'm saying is LeBron is a better pick for this team than Iverson. That's my only argument.
No, he's not. LeBron doesn't fit on this team. You have to have a five-man out system for LeBron.
Yeah, I got to agree with that, Tony. I mean, and we have 21 years of watching it that proves that that's the case.
Prove to me where Iverson fits on this team. You have a terrible efficient shooter that's not a shooter, that's not going to have the ball. Shaq is a better option. Durant is a better option. Jordan's a better option. Kobe's a better option. Why would you go to Iverson at all?
But that's the point, though.
He's not shooting. He has Kobe and Mike and Kevin Durant shooting and Shaq.
Okay. So here's my question.
Iverson's not shooting.
So that's my question. Shooting. That's my question. Iverson.
You say Iverson in the All-Star game play with their talent. Look at Iverson play with their talent. That's what he would play like.
But no. Iverson played like that.
He's not shooting. He's playing point guard.
Okay.
He's
Iverson
guard that can get up the court. That's all it is.
Okay, so Iverson.
Hey, you lost this one. I take my comments off the air. But you lost this one, Tony.
Appreciate the call.
Hold on. So Iverson's out shooting. We saw him in the All-Star games, right? Iverson's first All-Star game, 18 attempts. His second All-Star game, 21 attempts. His fourth All-Star game, 23 attempts. So you saw him play like that, and he still shot it, and nobody played any D. And that's what I'm saying. And it's not even a debate whether I lost or won. What I'm saying is there's no way that you could say Iverson is a better fit for this team than LeBron. LeBron's more willing to take a back seat with shooting than Iverson. LeBron is a more efficient player than Iverson. LeBron's a better defender than Iverson.
So while all of that may be true, the fact that what Mel was saying at the end of the day is that with the other players that you have on this team that Shai-Gilgeous named, LeBron doesn't fit. So I think where Mel was going very simply is that even though you make a lot of sense with what you're saying about Allen Iverson, at the end of the day, he is a better fit, maybe not perfect, but a better fit for this lineup that Shai-Gilgeous made than LeBron James is. That's what we're saying.
And that's what I'm saying.
I gotta agree with
I
you on
don't
that.
see that. I don't see Iverson being a better fit. That's what I'm saying.
All right, that's fair. We'll
Yeah.
agree to disagree on this one. That was a nice little heated discussion. That's all good. But what we're gonna do is okay, we're looking for we got another 904-219-8264. Looks like we got somebody else that wants to call in. So we'll hold up a second and wait for that, and then we'll go to the next topic, which that should be an interesting one.
Yeah, not only that, like if you're gonna have somebody not shoot, not play up where there's so many different players better than Iverson. Or LeBron, if you don't want that team to fit. Like I said, I think Nash would be a great one on that one. Rondo would be a good one on that one. Chris Paul would be another good one on that one.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of who would be better. It's a matter of we're talking about responding to the players that Shai-Gilgeous named on his 5. And so that's where it comes in. And again, I got to agree that Iverson would be, maybe not by much, but a better fit for that team than LeBron, because at the end of the day, LeBron is almost useless without the ball. He's not a guy who consistently wants to just lock in and defend. See, you can say that he doesn't have to shoot, but he's got to have the ball so he can facilitate and pass and make all the decisions. Even if he's not doing that, like this is why he can't play within the system, right? This has always been the case. He's not going to play within his system. He has to be the system. And I think that's where we have a problem.
And that's my point. Allen Iverson has to do the exact same thing, be the system. He just does it less efficiently. That's what I'm saying. He always had to be that. That's why he's shooting 27.8 shots a game. That's why he's shooting 41%, 39%. When he went to Memphis, his first 3 games, he's shooting like 57% off the bench. He was efficient as hell. Guess what? I got to get out of here because it ain't all being all ran through me. It does not work for him. He doesn't want to take a backseat. And that's my problem.
So, well, we can do a little bit of psychology here before we move on. But we know how Iverson felt about Mike. You think if he's playing with Jordan, he's not taking that back seat? Yeah, he is. We know how he felt about Kobe. You think if he's playing with Kobe, he's not taking that back seat? Yeah,
no, because I think part of Iverson's what made him great was that he really thought he was the best player. He really thought that I'm 4 for 17 and I'm the best player out here, even though I'm only shooting 23.5%.
Yeah, but in a lot of cases, and I'm not the biggest Iverson fan, so let's not say that, but in a lot of cases, he was still a guy who, even though shooting 4 for 17, still was the best player out there. That's the scary part of how good he was.
No, I'm saying he's not good like that. I'm just saying he was extremely inefficient, and that's why they didn't win. He might have been the best player, but it didn't result in wins throughout the host of the totality of his career. Like I said, he only got out of the playoffs first round 3 times. He only got out the second round once, and he had crazy talent with like guys like Melo. That Nuggets team was really talented with Kenyon Martin, Nene, J.R. Smith, Birdman. Yeah, it had talent, but he couldn't do nothing with it because it was all about him. That's how he played. That's how he learned to play. That's what he learned what it was about. And that's just how it went.
All right, well, we'll agree to disagree on that.
Yeah.
Shout out Eugene Genius. What's up, bro? So let's go ahead and move to the next topic on this one. And this is one that I definitely wanted to get to. So we know that right now the NBA is having, well, they like to frame it as their most efficient offensive season of all time, which I guess statistically is true, but it's also one of the most explosive offensive seasons of all time. A few weeks back, I did a show about it, talking about how I think you had like, what was it? 4 or 5 60-point games in the same week. It was the same week that was the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's 81-point game, and of course his untimely death, him, Gianna, and 7 others in that helicopter crash in California. But anyway, all that just lends to talking about the way offense is absolutely out of control in the modern NBA, and you saw it, I guess, probably, I don't want to say at its best, but maybe at its worst in this last All-Star game, where, what was it, 211 to 187, the highest scoring game, I guess, in history. No NBA team had ever hit 200 points before. And I get it, it's an All-Star game, but that's funny because I actually recently watched, maybe about 3 days ago, the 1987 All-Star game. I watched it on YouTube, and even though that was an all-star game, it resembled a real basketball game, not guys just letting each other, shoot open threes and get open dunks. Like, guys were really competing and trying to win. So even though maybe it wasn't up to the same level of vitriol and physicality and intensity as, an old Eastern Conference playoff game, them guys were still trying to win. And so you look at the modern NBA and you're saying, man, and this is something I've talked about for years and years, how there is so little defense in the modern NBA. And it's really frustrating, especially when you got guys telling me that today the guys are so much better and they're so much more skilled. And I'm like, no, I don't really believe that. So here's an example, right? One thing I always make this example. I say, okay, Tony, in 1995, you run a 100-meter dash. And you run it in 10 flat. And Tony now is, he's the fastest 100-meter dash in history, right? 10 flat, 1995. Cool. Bruce comes along in 2005, and Bruce runs a 9.5 and blows Tony's 10 flat out of the water. Bruce is now the fastest man in the history of the world. Fantastic, right? And so here's the thing, okay? I now have the fastest 100 meters in the history of the world. But when Tony ran his 100 meters, he ran his uphill. I ran mine flat. Am I really faster than Tony? I don't think so. And I say that to say what it is this. When you start looking at degree of difficulty, it has to matter. And so the NBA literally changing the rules to favor offense, and this is not my opinion, and I'm going to back that up in a minute, has to play into all of what we're seeing in terms of the scoring and the explosive offense and all of that, and all of these things that we're seeing in which people are going to say that today's players are so much better. So check this out. This is Stu Jackson, former executive vice president of basketball operations in the NBA. Quote, with rule and interpretation changes, it has become more difficult for defenders to defend penetration, cover the entire floor on defensive rotations, and recover to shooters. This has provided more time for shooters to ready themselves for quality shots. With more dribble penetration, ball handlers are getting more opportunities at the rim, unquote. Here's Rod Thorne, former NBA vice president of basketball operations. Quote, we want to make it a more free-flowing, fluid, wide-open game, unquote. Okay, so also Stu Jackson. According to Stu Jackson, the new rules, and these were the rules that were changed around 2004, 2005, they discourage bigger players from staying in the middle of the lane and preventing passing, player movement, and therefore improving shooting percentage close to the basket. Okay, now here's another one. So we heard constantly that the reason Michael Jordan was able to score so much is because he didn't have to score against the zone. So that made it easier. Okay, cool. That's what you want to hang your hat on, LeBron people? I got you. Check it out. So here's an unnamed source from the NBA office. Quote, rather than impede the game, zone defense arguably has helped foster the offensive renaissance by giving teams more incentive to score on fast breaks. The rules have stretched the defenses to the limit and reward the offense with fast break and three-point shooting opportunities by eliminating defensive contacts, unquote. So the reason that I brought up all those quotes was to say that it's nonsensical to sit here and try to tell me today's players are so much better when they're literally playing under conditions that were formulated to allow them to do what they're doing. Now, do they have to make the shots? Absolutely. Do they have to hone their skills? Absolutely. But it's a lot easier to do it when the defense is handicapped. Let's go ahead and get into your thoughts on this, Tony.
Well, I did want to bring this up. So back in the 70s, 60s, 50s, it used to be a travel unless you put your hand had to be at the top of the ball. On the side, anything like that was travel. You had to be at top of the ball.
Carry,
so
right? Carry, right?
Well, yeah, especially because if you put it under, it's called palming, and that's when they hit you with the palming, they just never call it anymore. So
that's true too. I didn't even get into that.
Yeah, that's the Allen Iverson rule. So what I'm saying is when you see the factor and you see old players dribbling, well, they were only allowed to dribble like this. Okay, now I'm not saying they're not better dribblers or anything like that, but I'm saying you have to factor in the rules. There's a big clip, right? There's a clip of Dominique in the 80s doing the Euro step being called for a travel.
David Robinson too.
Right. So so you got to factor in there's different rules now to make the offensive player better. I have a cool stat about that actually, and I was going to bring this up last night, but we didn't get to it. Did you know last year's Kings were on pace for 118.6 points per 100 possessions? That was the highest ever.
That's crazy.
That was the highest ever per 100. This year, 5 teams are beating them. You got the Celtics at 122.2, Pacers at 121, Thunder at 120.5, Bucks at 119.9, and the Clippers at 119.8. Then you have the Hawks, Mavs, Sixers, Suns, Warriors, Nuggets, Knicks, Pelicans, all within a point. So it obviously, just on the numbers alone, obviously it's an upward trend, and there is a reason why that is. And because, like I said, we have rules now, and we have, it used to be in the 90s. We talked about this recently too, like the Spurs dominance. Do you know the Spurs in the 99 playoffs, they held teams in the 60s more than they scored 100? There's only one team scored 100 that entire playoff run for them, and that was the Lakers, and it was 107. It was the night they got swept. So the defense had gotten too good at that point in time, and the ratings were low because at the end of the day, offense sells. Nobody take a look at football. Nobody wants a 3-0 defensive stalemate. They want a 42 to 38, you know, back and forth barn burner. That's what they want. So same thing in the NBA. But now we've gotten to the point where we're too focused on offense, and it looks like, you know, it's not nearly as fun.
It's a video game.
Yeah, because if you would have took me and said there's going to be a 211 to 186 game, I'm in theory, but then not watching anybody compete because it wasn't even a game. It was a shoot around. That's what the game was. It was a shoot around. It was a nonstop shoot around. Looked like they were warming up. So those are some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. To your point about those 99 Spurs and how great they were defensively, we can also look at the 04 Pistons, who I believe held 13 straight opponents under 70. Now that is defense. Now, again, that's probably not the most exciting for the layman, right? You're trying to grow the game. You need some excitement. And so what we had, the 80s were a pretty fast decade. A big part of that was the Denver Nuggets in the West and the Showtime Lakers in the West. But then towards the end of that decade with the bad boy Pistons and them being an elite defensive team, and then you moved into the 90s, you had the Knicks playing bully ball, you had the Bulls being a lockdown defensive team, you had the Rockets being great defensive teams, winning championships, and so on and so forth. And so things totally changed, right? But we remember, I think most of us who are into basketball kind of remember the was it the 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns in 2006?
Can I bring up a point real quick though?
Yeah.
I don't know if you even remember the Mike Fratello Cavs of the early and mid 90s.
Yeah.
They used up 23 seconds of the 20 every possession. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Price was great, but that's another that's a guy who would kill today. But anyway, totally different argument. Anyway, yeah, so we kind of remember the 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns, Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, Mike D'Antoni as the team that ushered in the explosive, fast-paced offense. And this is crazy. I was doing research for this show, and I found it. That team averaged 110.4 points per game, which at that time was one of the highest ever and 7 points higher than the next closest team. Cool. That would rank 28th in scoring in today's NBA. Like, it's ridiculous what we are seeing in terms of lack of defense. And it's funny because prior to the All-Star game, we heard Adam Silver talking about guys who were going to compete and it was going to be a better game and so on and so forth. And then if you remember, I think after the East won and he was handing out the trophy and the All-Star MVP and all that, he looked so disgusted and he's like, well, you scored the most points, so I guess you won. And he looked utterly disgusted. But how are you going to be disgusted when you are the main ones that you're one of the main ones that's, you know, all about this thing? Because if you remember, I think it was late last year, he was on Kevin Garnett's podcast and KG asked him like, hey, are we ever going to see, you know, hand checking comeback or real defense? And Adam Silver kind of hemmed and hawed around it, but he basically made it known that, you know, he wants a game that can highlight the offensive players' abilities, and allowing defenders to kind of put a damper on that is not something that he wanted. And so I think it's I think it was super frustrating for him to kind of see what he and David Stern had envisioned as a global game, a fast-paced game, an exciting game for the fans, come back and turn around to bite them in the butt with what we have now, which often seems like a non-competitive product, at least until the playoffs. I have, in fairness, noted that over the last couple of years, the playoffs have looked more physical. I mean, it'll never go back to the 90s, but more physical and more defensive oriented. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But what we're seeing is just in the regular season, for the most part, games that are 3-point shooting contests, and that's just not basketball. So what are your thoughts on maybe some things that could be done to try and, I'm not, again, saying that we can take it back to the 90s, but kind of try to slow things down and create, as the NBA guys say, Joe Dumars and Adam Silver, a little more balance?
Well, a couple different things on it is, one is eliminate the defensive 3 seconds. When you
That's
play
where
zone,
I was going. Absolutely.
Right, so we can eliminate that. We can bring back hand checking, and then
they're never going to do that.
Yeah. Let's see what happens. Maybe it could be like when they brought the synthetic ball and it didn't work out after a month or so. Maybe they can switch it up if it doesn't, work out or anything like that. But those would be some things I would like to see. I would also like for the hunting for foul calls. If I'm moving and you're moving, but you're colliding in my space, even though I'm not standing still, that shouldn't be a foul on me. That should be just a foul on you. You're the one colliding into me. I have a right to be here. So those could be some of the things that's doing it. I think that we have to listen to the fans more. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of fans are growing with the collective. I hate the current league. I hate the defense and all that. And part of it is I think they've also made the league with catering more to the offensive player and the big name player. They've made the league, for lack of a better term, a bunch of spoiled brats. It's all about them. It's no longer about the fans. It's about what's best for the player. Think of it like this. If you went into Walmart and we were going to do everything that was best for the cashier, would you continue to shop there? And that's the same thing. So you have to cater it more to the fans. And the fans look at it like this. I go out and I make $20 an hour and I work construction and I'm busting my ass, sweating off, in the elements. And you got a guy at $50 million making a year complaining that he's being called Westbrick instead of Westbrook.
Yeah,
if I was making $50 million, I could handle name call.
You can call me whatever for that money.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. I had a sports sociologist on my show not too long ago. We were talking about things like this. So breaking it down from the sociology aspects of it. And I think that's what we have to do with it too. We have to make it more fan friendly, and the fans want more defense right now. They want more. Really, it's not even about defense. They want a more competitive game. It doesn't even matter if you're not playing defense. It's the competitive spirit there. Are you trying? Are you trying to play defense? That's all that really matters. You have your boy LeBron right now. He doesn't even play defense, and then glares at other people when they don't do their defensive rotation. Well, bro, I was covering your slack. I don't even care that he does that to stay on the court. But don't try to blame someone else because when you're not playing D.
Well, he's been blaming other people for his mistakes for his entire career, but we're not going to get into that. That's kind of what he does. But no, I totally get it. So Eugene Genius in the chat, shout out G. He says just call traveling. So I agree with that, but here's a big problem. We're going to have a whistle every 3 seconds if we start calling every travel, if we call every carry, if we call every double dribble. We are going to have a ton because these guys are growing up now thinking that it's okay to play that way, with this 0 step and this gather step and, taking 3 steps on the side step back 3 and all this stuff. Like that, they say that Kyrie Irving has the best handle in NBA history, and his handle is incredible, no doubt. But I can't agree with that. You can't be the best if so much of what you do is based on a violation. I can't agree with that. So that's problematic for me. But I definitely like your suggestion to do away with the defensive 3 second, because what that does is it brings back shot blockers into the paint. So you don't get so many just easy layups and dunks like it's nothing. So that's a big one, because you look at it. Wembanyama is averaging 3.5 blocks per game as a rookie, but he's not like in the paint like a traditional shot blocker. It's because of his incredible length that he's able to recover after showing on a pick and roll or switching and still, get there to get the block. So that's atypical. You're not going to have too many guys, right? Rudy Gobert, think about the type of shot blocker he could be if there was no defensive 3 second rule. He would probably get 4 blocks a game. And so I think that's a big one. I don't think, to your point, that I don't think they'll ever bring back the hand checking rule because they just don't want a defender to be able to move an offensive player around. But I think they need to do away with this concept of all those away from the ball fouls to allow for freedom of movement and free flowing and all that, like, it's basically just allowing the offensive player to go wherever they want on the floor and do whatever they want. It's like you have to allow the defense to do something. And that's kind of my thought on it. You got to allow the defense to do something.
Well, I was going to say this about a couple of things is back when, I want you to think about back when you were in high school or whatever, you probably really wanted a 40-inch vertical.
I did.
Right.
Never
right.
had one.
And now it's not about the 40-inch vertical. It's about who's got the 40-inch step back. That's where the game has changed. I have another way of doing it. And how much cussing can we do on here?
I try not to. I try to keep it clean, because if somebody's riding around in the car with their kid, I don't want them to have to change the channel.
Well, basically, okay, so I'll change the word. Okay, so basically what I would do is all these people that are hunting for fouls and often fouls, and trying to search for fouls, and then complain when they don't, like Luka Doncic, he complains after every call. Complains after every play, So what I would do is, if I was the ref, and I'd be like, hey, bro, check this out. If you need sissy calls to make it, go up on the podium, tell everybody you're a sissy, and then I will give you sissy calls. Or you can get man calls. You either going to be a sissy or a man.
Right.
You can't beg for sissy calls and then claim how tough and how hard you are. Nothing worse than you complaining about not getting any calls and then flex it.
And then flex it when you get an and one, right?
Right. There's nothing worse than that. So go on the podium, admit you're a sissy, and we'll give you sissy calls. I think that could be a way to fix it. We're only giving players sissy calls that admit they're a sissy. And that's not the word I would use.
Yeah, no,
I would make them use a different word. But I think that could fix it.
Yeah, I saw the other day, there was a play, I can't remember what the game was, but they basically barreled into LeBron, put their forearm in his chest, ran him over, and went and scored. And he was irate with the referee, like, where's the call? And I'm like, you've been doing this your entire career, bro. What are you and now you're looking for this call? Get out of here, man. But
there's that one sound bite with him where he's telling PJ Tucker, you're too big to be flopping. Well, you're bigger than him.
Yeah, come on, man. I actually I put together a montage of LeBron and his ridiculous flops. I mean, it's so absurd. And then he actually looked at the camera at one point and winked after he did it. Like, come on, man. But it is what it is. He's been getting away with it, so he's going to continue to do so. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on the change in the league and the defense and what should be done. Now, at the end of the day, I think very little will be done. So they're very careful, the NBA, how they're wording it. They're not saying that they need more defense. They're not saying they need to slow down the offense. They're saying they have the competition committee looking at it to, if necessary, create more balance. So that is what that is. All right, so we're going to go to the next topic. This is going to be the final topic, and this is one I've really been looking for, but before we do that, if you want to go ahead and call in and give us your thoughts on the defense in the NBA or the offense or what can be done, or does anything even need to be done, go ahead, give us a call. See the number there on the screen, 904-219-8264. 904-219-8264. I'm going to go ahead and we'll start in on the next topic, but if you want to go ahead and call, you do that, and we'll get back to you. All right, so the next topic, this is one that I've really been super excited about since you and I met, Tony, because you told me about this, and I was like, I got to hear this. So before we start, let me give you my top 5 greatest players of all time, and there's a reason that I'm going to do that. My top 5 greatest players of all time: number 1, Michael Jordan; number 2, Magic Johnson; number 3, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar; number 4, Larry Bird; number 5, Hakeem Olajuwon. And yes, LeBron is not in my top 5 of all time, so be it. Deal with it. But yeah, the reason that I brought that up and I gave my top 5 of all time is because I think that Hakeem Olajuwon is the second best two-way player of all time behind Michael Jordan in terms of defensive skill and dominance and offensive skill and dominance. I truly believe that. Now, I've done other shows where I talked about the fact that I think that Hakeem is probably the most criminally disrespected and underrated all-time great in NBA history. Like, you really don't hear people talking about him the way that they should. If we look at that 2-year run where he won back-to-back championships, that run in '94, where I think it's just him and Jordan, the only players to be regular season MVP, all-star starters, first-team All-NBA, first-team All-NBA defense, defensive player of the year, and finals MVP all in the same season. Olajuwon did that. Now, some are going to say, well, he only won because Jordan is not there. Well, that's a fair argument, but we'll never know. But at the end of the day, Olajuwon had the conditions that he had, and he dominated through said conditions. Now, I think Dream, and we saw it, when he was at his peak, I honestly don't believe when he was at his peak that there's any center ever that could have dealt with him. And so this is where we get to the topic. And Tony, you told me when we first met that you believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the 1995 Houston Rockets are the best championship team of all time. Is that correct?
Not the best. A whole lot of teams would beat them. I believe they are the greatest team.
The greatest. Okay, go ahead and tell us why the 1995 Houston Rockets are the greatest championship team of all time.
Well, first off, we have to separate what greatest and best is, and I'll just make an example of this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If me and Michael Jordan played basketball one-on-one, right? He beat me 11-0, okay? And then in the second game, I beat him 11-9, okay? He would have a better win than me. He beat me by 11. I beat him by 2. But the fact that I beat Jordan, I would have the greater win. Even though I only won by 2 and he won by an 11, I have the greater win. It is the greater accomplishment for me to beat Jordan than Jordan to skunk me in a game.
Fair.
That is the difference between greater and best. So when I say that they are the greatest, I mean they are the greatest. They accomplished the most amazing thing. There are a bunch of teams better than them. So as far as that goes, the 95 Rockets are the only team ever to beat 4 55-win plus teams. Not only the only team to beat 4 55-win team, they beat teams that were 4 57-plus win teams. They're also the only team ever to beat the top 4 teams by record in the same playoffs. They did it all on the road. Not only did they do it all on the road, they did it in every single fashion. And then not only did they do it in every single fashion, every single round they beat someone, they beat an MVP. So when you talk about they beat guys that were like top 7 guys, the lowest they beat was, let's see, who would be the lowest at? David Robinson, maybe? Charles Barkley? Where do you guys have them at? 25, 30? So the top 30, they beat 4 of the top 30 players. So let's start off. In the first round, they go down to the Jazz 0-2. They win game 5 because it was only best of 5 back then in the Delta Center. They win. Then they go down 0-2 against the Suns, who won 59 wins. Oh, by the way, the Jazz won 60. So then they go down 0-2 against the Suns, 3-1 against the Suns. They come back. They win game 7 on the road in Phoenix, 4-3. Then they take on the top-rated seed and the MVP that year of the 62-win Spurs. They win the first 2 on the road. They lose the next 2 at home. They win the next 2. They win in 6. And Hakeem dominated that series. It was 35, 11,
35, 12, 5, and 4.
Yeah, something like that. Then the next one, he dominated Shaq, and they swept them. They were down by 18. They came back in the first round, won in overtime. Kenny Smith at the time set the record for most threes in a finals game.
7.
Yes. Then and then not only that, he went up against Shaq. He averaged 32, 12. He averaged another 32 and 12. So that is why they're the greatest team. They are the only team to win all 4 on the road. They're the only team to beat the top 4. They had there was no weak team they beat. You take the 96 Bulls. The 96 Bulls beat the 42-win Heat. The 50-win Knicks. Then who they beat? And then they beat a 60-win team and another 64-win team. So they had weak competition as they were beating it. The only way that you can say the Bulls are greater than the Rockets is if you value regular season wins over playoff wins. The Bulls were beating 42-win teams in the first round. The Rockets were beating 60-win teams in the first round. The Rockets had no home court advantage. The Bulls did. So that is the only, like I said, if you value 72 wins over 47, then that's your argument. I personally think what they did in the playoffs is way more valuable.
You know what? So here's the thing. I have talked for the last, almost 30 years now about, so let me back up. I'm left-handed, and David Robinson for a long time was a player that I loved. He was my favorite center. He's lefty. He could shoot the jumper. He could handle the rock. He could run the floor. I loved him. And then I saw what Dream did to him. And I saw the way that Dream did it. And as great as Dream was, that prior playoff run, and he was incredible, I had never seen anything like what he did to David Robinson. And I talk about it all the time. that is the most sustained domination of a player of that level that we've ever seen. That's why I think it's the single greatest playoff series ever played. And we can look at it and say, well, other guys have had great series. For instance, Michael Jordan averaged 41 in the 93 finals, and that was incredible. I think that's the all-time high for an NBA finals series, excuse me. And it was incredible, no doubt. But even though Dan Marley was all NBA defense, he wasn't, he's not a Hall of Famer. He wasn't a dream teamer. He wasn't a player the level of David Robinson. So when you look at David Robinson and matched up individually for an entire series, 6 games against Hakeem Olajuwon, and you see Olajuwon averaging 35, 12, 5, and 4, just complete and utter dominance, and not just scoring, but absolutely dismantling David Robinson throughout the process. I mean, making him look silly, pulling out moves and things we have never seen before and not seen since. It was that crazy. And so I look at that and I say, that's the single greatest playoff performance I've ever seen. Now, Clyde Drexler also did a great job stepping up. I think he averaged 25 a game throughout that playoff run to help Olajuwon. No, am I off on those numbers? 20. Okay, I thought it was 20 during the regular season. But regardless, I know he had one 41-point game in that playoff run and a couple more 30-point games. But regardless, Drexler was the help that, because I don't think, as great as Olajuwon was in 95, I don't think he would have been able to do it all by himself again like he did in 94 if he didn't have Drexler with him. So breaking down the way you broke it down in terms of being that 6th seed, coming back in 3 different series from, 2-game deficits, that's crazy. I don't think we've ever seen that. And to that point, it may actually bear discussion that is arguably the greatest playoff run that we've ever seen based on what the Rockets did in 1995. That's crazy. I'm very impressed by that breakdown. That was something that I've been waiting to hear, but that is crazy. And again, Dream is my guy. So let me ask you this. Now that you've broken down why that was arguably the greatest playoff run, let's drill down to the individual, some that I talked about at the beginning of this segment. Where are you on my contention that Hakeem Olajuwon is the second best two-way player of all time behind Michael Jordan?
I would have him as the best two-way player of that regard, because I think his defense was leaps and bounds over Jordan. Like, I'll put it this way. He was slightly, at the very peaks, he was a slightly worse thief than Jordan. He was 4 times the shot blocker he was, and he was 2 or 3 times the defensive rebounder he was. Jordan was because him at his peak was 28 a game. Jordan at his best years were 32. I mean, I don't know if you want to count 37, but that wasn't his best right. as Jordan. So Jordan was a slightly better offensive player as far as putting up buckets, but Hakeem was more efficient with the field. He just shot less. So I would have him as a better two. I say this all the time. Hakeem is the best player I've ever seen. That 95 Hakeem was better than anything I've ever seen Jordan play, as far as the eye test goes, because of the level of competition. Jordan, when he was matched up, he wasn't matched up against other MVPs. He wasn't matched up against other defensive players of the year. He wasn't matched up against the most dominating player ever. Nothing like that. So I have Hakeem on the eye test as being the best I've ever seen. Now, obviously, I think for a career, Jordan is greater. Jordan accomplished more and all that. And I think Jordan was better more seasons than Elijah. But once again, that's one of those one-of-one things. I will take Olajuwon's best season over Jordan's best season.
So does it mean anything to you that Michael Jordan is the only guy to be Defensive Player of the Year while leading the league in scoring? And besides that, the only Defensive Player of the Year to average 30 points or more? Because, we know how much physically it takes out of you to be an elite defender. And to do that while still shouldering the load of being the best offensive player in the league, that's crazy. What are your thoughts on that?
Really, to me, though, it means nothing, because once again, Defensive Player of the Year is subjective. What were the numbers to back it up? You just thought he was playing the best, but more than likely, and I haven't broken down the numbers, the more likely he did not lead in defensive win shares, defensive block plus steals, and obviously blocks. He did not lead in that. There were other players that led in other defensive categories. So it's a subjective. You have, as you're seeing it, like this guy's good, this guy, but I just think this guy's good. And maybe I think it because I like the way he plays more, or maybe because his team won more or anything like that. So, I mean, Elijah was putting up 28 while blocking 4 shots, getting 2 steals and getting 12 rebounds. Jordan never did that. So it depends what you value more.
So I'm with you on the steals. I think it's incredible that Elijah being, a 7-footer or 6'11", however you want to say it, but being pretty much a 7-footer, a center, retired top 10 in steals. I believe he's still top 10 in steals. So that is crazy. However, on the flip side of that, is it fair to compare his block shots and Michael Jordan's block shots, being that he is a center? Like, is that fair? Because if we look at it, Michael Jordan retired. Hold on one second. Michael Jordan retired as the all-time leading shot blocker among guards. D Wade eventually broke that, but Michael Jordan, for being a guard, was an absolutely elite shot blocker.
Right, he was for a guard, and Hakeem was an absolutely elite thief for any position. So normally centers can't do that. So Hakeem Hakeem was a big who reached into that guard realm. You know what I mean? And that is why I have Hakeem as a better two-way player, because Hakeem could do guard things. Jordan could not do big man things. Like I said, he was a good positional shot blocker. For a guard, he blocked a lot of shots. Overall, no. He was a good positional assist man, but not overall. He was a good positional rebounder, but not overall. Hakeem, other than assists, was not a good positional. He was just a good period in everything but assists.
Right.
And those are the 5 things you majorly do. You get assists, you get steals, you get blocks, you get rebounds, you get points. Every other thing that you break down statistically wise is a derivative off those 5 things. So that's why I think Hakeem, because Hakeem is able to reach into guard realms that Michael Jordan cannot reach into big man realm. So if we're comparing 2 ways, then, and this is what I always say, when you get down to the top 10, because I start breaking down like 10 players and top 10, you got to start splitting hairs because they're all great.
Absolutely.
They're all great. Like, to be honest with you, if you would tell me I would rather have, Tim Duncan over Michael Jordan, and you say, well, why is that? Well, he caused no problems. He was the only player ever to win 50 games for 20 straight years, 19.
I thought it was 15, but go ahead.
Huh?
I thought it was 15, that 50-game win streak, but
No. For 19 straight years, he did 50. The only years that he didn't hit was the 99 lockout season when they played 15 games. But if you factor in playoff wins, he won 52 games that year. And, playoff wins should count more than regular season wins. So all I'm saying is, if you said that is the reason why, he doesn't rock the boat, he's coachable, you can yell at him, he'll do whatever to win. And like Tim Duncan really will. He'll come off the bench, he'll take a pay cut. Tim Duncan will legitimately do whatever to win. And a lot of players will not, because Kobe even said this once, and I don't know, do you know who Joseph Vincent is? He makes amazing documentaries on YouTube.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, he just did a Kobe documentary. It's awesome. I have a lot of it on my TikTok page and all that, because like I said, I found it amazing. But Kobe said a lot of players play for financial gain. And I found out once they get that financial gain, their drive, their passion, their obsession to win is gone.
Yep.
So I'm saying, when you got Tim Duncan, who's willing to, after he won, take the pay cut, take the less minutes, take the bench role, and all that. So I can understand that, because Tim Duncan is a top 10 guy. And this is what I mean by splitting hairs. You just like Jordan. He looks more, but Tim Duncan got you 5 rings too. He just doesn't look as good. So that's where this breakdown goes in. So as far as like back to the Hakeem, yes, I think Hakeem is more well-rounded. And like I said, except for assists, and we've seen in playoffs where he's getting 5-6 assists, which is great for positional numbers as well.
Well, I'm not mad at that. Let me make that clear. Hakeem Olajuwon is actually my favorite player of all time. Like, I love watching that dude play. I still go back and watch this guy. But that said, I find it so hard to go against Michael Jordan, because I think the difference offensively, along with him being an elite defender, is probably the difference in those guys as two-way players. Now, that in no way, in my estimation, takes away from anything Dream did, because he is the only guy, if I'm not mistaken, in history to retire top 10 in 4 major statistical categories, and that's points, rebounds, shot blocking, and steals. Like, nobody else can say that. So to your point, that is absolutely absurd that anyone could do that. Furthermore, a big, right? So I get where you make that argument, but like I said, that the difference in Michael Jordan's ability to absolutely take over a game offensively, I think, is the differentiator. I think that's the separator that puts, because the difference in defense, I don't think is as large as you would like to think. I chalk a lot of that up to the fact that, again, Michael Jordan's a 6'6" guard and Dream is a 7-foot center. So, excuse me. I got to go with Mike just because of the offensive dominance. But, I'm not mad at your argument that you make either.
No, and if that's what you go with, that's what you go with. Like I said, I can't knock anybody for going with Mike over that. I just said that that's what I think about with the King. But I also think, too, part of the Mike thing is because, like I said, I have a rotation of 5 players I think that can be argued for the GOAT logically. So I don't think it's the gap that people want to say that it is. It's just that when you look at like the advanced numbers as well, Michael Jordan for his career is a +2 on the defensive end, defensive plus box score minus or whatever. And Hakeem's 2.5. And he just consistently is better every year. It's kind of like this. It's the difference between Mike and Kobe in shooting. Kobe shoots 45, Mike shoots 50. People try to go over the course of the game, that's only one shot. Well, if you take away one shot, Jordan's maybe only got 3 or 4 rings instead of 6. That's how much one shot can make. And consistently, Hakeem is one shot better every game, and that adds up. I'm not saying it's a league route, but that is a big over the course. A couple points, that is a big difference. If you have enough ability to swing a game, a couple points, you're a hell of a player.
Fair enough. And we're going to leave that right there. So that was our last topic for the day. That was incredible. But before we go ahead and close out, I wanted to make sure that I drop a little nugget here. And it's called This Day in the NBA. And today in the NBA, it's March 2nd. And 64 years ago today, March 2nd, 1962, Wilt Chamberlain did what we consider the impossible. Now, with the way the defensive rules are today, if they don't change, man, who knows? Maybe somebody will hit 25 threes in a game. Who knows? But Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points against the New York Knicks in Hershey, Pennsylvania on this day in 1964. So shouts to the Big Dipper. I hope you're somewhere looking back on that fondly and saying, I can't believe I did that. But knowing Wilt, he probably can believe he did that. But yeah, that's this day in the NBA. So what I want to do before we get out of here is give Tony an opportunity to go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, man.
Yeah, I got a weekly show Monday through Friday. It's called the Hoop Storians. We are on the Sports Fluent channel. We're with Sports Fluent Media. We are 10 p.m. Eastern. We kind of do history. We kind of, break down different things because nowadays anybody, and as you see by this show, and we did it last time too, anybody, we only want to talk about Jordan and LeBron, and I'm trying to expand it more. Like you said about, the greatest disrespected player was Hakeem. I think the greatest all-time disrespected player is Bob Pettit. Nobody knows about Bob Pettit and just how great he was. Just for example, he 26 and 16 would be a good game. He averaged that for his entire career. Not just a season, for his entire career. So that's kind of what we do on the show. We try to show a different level of NBA history and how everybody made up what you see today. And there's more than just LeBron and Jordan. Fair enough. And by the way, as you mentioned it, another probably underappreciated, disrespected all-time great, Moses Malone. But maybe that's another topic for another day. Say again. A tier 1 guy. There are tier level players. He is a tier 1 level player. I can go with that. Dominant rebounder, incredible scorer. Absolutely. Dominated Kareem in the finals. 1983. You're right. Yes. That's right. Had Kareem averaging 7 boards a game in that series, and that dude is 7'2". Right. There you go. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and leave it right there. We're going to get out of here. Hey, thank you so much for everybody who tuned in. Appreciate you. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, and that notification bell. Make sure you do that. Really appreciate it. That's going to be it. And I'll be back with you guys on the next episode. And I'm out. Peace.